welcome to Thuma Mina Teaching. Let's have a look at where we are at in the curriculum. In today's lesson, we will be covering perimeter and area of circles. Let's have a look at the radius and the diameter. If I have a circle, then this would be my midpoint. This point is exactly in the middle of the circle. If I draw a line from the midpoint of the circle to the perimeter, I call that a radius. Thus, this is a radius, this is a radius, and that is also a radius. Can you see that two radiuses going through the midpoint will give me my diameter? Therefore, these two radiuses is my diameter, and I can say diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. The formula to calculate the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. We write the symbol of pi like that, and we spell it pi. Now what is pi? If I take the circumference of a circle and I divide it by my diameter, then I find pi. Pi is equal to this very long number you see there. And this is actually not the last number of pi. Pi has a never-ending decimal. Therefore, I can say that pi is the ratio between the circumference and the diameter. But we need to use pi in formulas. So therefore, we need to use an approximated value. 3.14 is an approximated value for pi. But this is a rather inaccurate number, since we know that pi has a never-ending decimal. Another approximated value is 22/7. But we will specify in a question paper if you need to use pi as 22/7. If we do not specify in a question paper, then you need to use the value of pi on your calculator. Find your calculator, press the shift button over here, and then you will see this yellow pi over here. That means you need to press shift and this button that says times 10 to the power of. If you then press equals and then you press SD, it will give you the value of pi. Obviously, your calculator screen cannot show all of the decimals of pi, so it will also show you a rounded off version, but it will use the actual value of pi in calculations. Let's look at our first example. Determine the circumference of the circle. I hope that you can remember the formula for the circumference of a circle. To determine the circumference, the formula is 2 times pi times the radius. Now, if the 5 centimeters is written over here, then that means my radius is 5 centimeters. But if the 5 centimeters was written right above my midpoint, then that means that the diameter is 5 centimeters and that the radius would be half of that, which is 2.5 centimeters. So for now, I know that the radius is 5 centimeters and therefore this side is also 5 centimeters. So circumference is equal to 2 times pi times my radius, which is 5. 2 times pi times 5 is exactly the same as 2 times 5 times pi, which gives me 10 pi. Now, if I type it in my calculator as 10 pi and I press the equal sign, remember to press the SD button to find the decimal value, and always round off to 2 decimal places unless otherwise specified. That means 10 pi is equal to 31.4159 ... We need to round this off correctly. This 5 causes the 1 to become a 2, and therefore my answer is 31.42 centimeters. Let's look at the next example. Determine the circumference of the circle. The problem now is I don't have the value of my radius, but I do have a right angled triangle and 2 out of the 3 sides. Therefore, I can use Pythagoras to calculate the third side. So, to determine r squared, I say 3 squared plus 4 squared is equal to r squared, with my reason, Pythagoras. Therefore, r squared is equal to 25, making r equal to 5. The problem is they didn't give us any units, so we cannot write millimeters, centimeters or meters. We need to then say r is equal to 5 units. Now, if you cannot remember how to apply the Pythagorean theorem, please refer to lessons 6 to 8. Now that I know the value of r, I can determine the circumference of the circle. I write that circumference, which I can just say c, is equal to 2 pi r. Therefore, 2 times pi times my radius, which I calculated as 5. Once again, 2 times pi times 5 is the same as 2 times 5 times pi, which is 10 pi. If I type this in on my calculator, I once again find a rounded off answer of 31.42 units. Always remember to write your units. Now we need to determine the perimeter of a semicircle. That means only the solid line. Why then is there a dotted line? This dotted line is to indicate the radius. Therefore, since my 8 centimeters is written above the midpoint, that is the length of my diameter. That means that my radius is equal to 4 centimeters. I can use the value of the radius to determine the perimeter of this semicircle. So, I write that the perimeter is equal to a half of that of a full circle, which means it's a half times 2 pi r. A half times 2 is equal to 1, which leaves us with 1 pi r, which is just pi r. Pi times r, which is 4, gives me 4 pi. If I insert 4 pi on my calculator and I press the SD button, I find the answer for my perimeter as 12.57 rounded off centimeters. Now determine the perimeter of this figure. This is a quarter of a circle. I only need to determine the perimeter of the solid line, which means this rounded area, which is green now. Why then the dotted line? Once again, it indicates my radius. Therefore, if this part is 2 meters, and that is a radius, this is also a radius since this is my midpoint, which will make this also 2 meters. Therefore, if I need to calculate the rounded part, I can say that the perimeter is equal to a quarter of a whole circle, which is equal to a quarter times 2 pi r. A quarter times 2 is equal to a half pi r. But my radius is 2. A half times 2 is 1 pi, which just leaves us with pi. And we already know that pi is rounded off equal to 3.14. Remember your units, meters. Let's determine the perimeter. Now there are no dotted lines. I only see solid lines. Therefore, the perimeter will include this rounded line, plus this blue straight line, plus this red straight line. That equals my total perimeter. So, when I determine my perimeter, I need to say it's the green part, which is a quarter of a circle. But now, since we all know that circles have no straight lines, this quarter of a circle will only determine this part. We still need to add the blue and the red line to determine the entire perimeter. So we need to add the blue 7 plus we need to add the red line. But we don't know the length of the red line. We know that this is the midpoint of the circle. Therefore, this is a radius, and therefore that is also a radius. That would mean that the red line is also 7 centimeters. So I need to add my red 7 as well. Now, since this is a quarter of a circle, I say a quarter times 2 pi r plus 7 plus 7 is 14. A quarter times 2 is equal to a half pi r but r is 7. So I substitute it in r's place, plus 14. Now I can insert this on my calculator. A half times pi times 7 plus 14 equals 24.9955, etc. The problem now is, since we need to round it off to 2 decimal places, we need to chop it off after the second decimal. This 5 would make the 9 a 10, which would also roll over and make this 9 a 10, which means that my final answer rounded off will be equal to 25 centimeters. We can also ask these type of questions in the form of a word sum. For example, the circumference of a circle is equal to 12 pi. So I can immediately write circumference, which I know the formula of as 2 pi r. And they tell me that the circumference is equal to 12 pi. So in circumference place, I substitute 12 pi. Therefore, 12 pi is equal to 2 times pi times r, which value I don't know yet. To determine r, I say 12 pi divided by 2 pi. Therefore, the 2 pi's can cancel out, and I am left with r being equal to 12 divided by 2, which is equal to 6 units. Watch out, I have still not answered my question. My question asks for the diameter, and I know that the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius, which is equal to 2 times 6, and therefore my diameter will be equal to 12 units. We now know how to determine the circumference of a circle. The formula is 2 pi r. To determine the area of a circle, we say pi times r squared. It is important for you to know these formulas and to differentiate between the two of them. Know which one determines circumference and which one determines the area. Let's look at our first example for area. Determine the area of this circle. Once again, I see that the radius is 5 centimeters. To determine the area, the formula is pi r squared, which means it's pi times my radius, which is 5 squared. 5 squared is equal to 25 pi. If I insert 25 pi on my calculator and I press the SG button, I find the value for area as 78.539, which causes me to round it off to 5,4. Always remember your units. Remember that area is measured in square millimeters, square centimeters, square meters, or square kilometers. Since this was measured in centimeters, my area will be 78.54 square centimeters. Your units are very important. Determine the area of this semicircle. Now, since we are working with area, it is never important to look if it's dotted lines or solid lines. It is only important when calculating circumference or perimeter. Therefore, I only need to determine the size of this shaded area. It has nothing to do with the dotted or solid line. So I can write that my area is equal to half of a whole circle, which is a half times pi r squared, which is equal to a half times pi times my radius, which is 4, since my diameter is 8. Therefore, I substitute 4 for my radius. A half times pi times 16 is the same as a half times 16 times pi. Half of 16 is 8 pi. If I insert 8 pi on my calculator, I find that the decimal value for area is 25.13 square centimeters. Let's once again determine the area. When calculating area, it does not matter if the lines are solid or dotted. Therefore, area is equal to a quarter of a whole circle, which would mean it's a quarter of pi r squared, which is equal to a quarter times pi, and r is 2, squared. That is a quarter times pi times 4. A quarter times 4 is 1, which leaves me with the answer of 1 pi, which is pi. And I know that the value for pi is 3.14 square meters. Now I see that all of my lines are solid. It does not matter since I'm not calculating perimeter. Area is equal to a quarter of a circle, which is equal to a quarter times pi r squared. My radius is 7 and therefore I substitute 7 into r's place. If I insert this on my calculator and I press the SD button, I find the answer as 38.48 square centimeters. We can find area in word sums as well. For example, the area of a circle is 9 pi. Determine the radius of the circle. Watch out, this time they do not ask for the diameter, they ask for the radius. Since they say that the area of the circle is equal to 9 pi, I'm going to write the formula for the area of a circle. Area is equal to pi r squared. Area is equal to 9 pi, therefore in area's place I substitute 9 pi, which is equal to pi r squared. I'm on my way to determine the value for r. To get r squared alone on the one side, I need to say 9 pi divided by pi, which causes the pi's to cancel. And I end up with r squared being equal to 9. To determine only r, I need to square root both sides. That means that r is equal to 3 units. Test your knowledge by doing the following examples. Remember, the answers will follow.
We hope you benefited from this video lesson. Our vision at Thuma Mina Teaching is to accelerate access to quality education. And our dream is to see learners across South Africa flourishing academically. We are a non-profit company and we are entirely dependent on public support. We produce lessons at the rate at which they are funded. As soon as a lesson is funded, it is published to the entire growing audience of Thuma Mina Teaching. Please consider taking hands with us in one of the following ways. Share our content with others that can benefit from it. A great way to support us is to find us on My School and to add us as your beneficiary. And consider donating towards a lesson, or ask your company's CSI department to partner with us. We are a PBO, so your donation is tax deductible. Our contact details you'll find on our website www.tmteaching.co.za. If you want to reach out to us, please email us on admin@tmteaching.co.za.